What is going on, beautiful people? Another day at the lab, and as I promised, gonna try to bring more videos for you guys. So today we have a episode that we'll talk about soon. First of all, what the hell are you doing, Andre? Hey,
trying to pick the
Pseudo Racer over here. Oh my God, you don't even need to go to the gym. What is that, Andre?
I don't know, talk about it in the next vlog.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the next vlog. Okay, anyway guys, today's topic, 4G63 as always. Okay, what are we doing? We got Ivan's car over here. I've actually calibrated this car before. I had this dyno, so on Road Race's dyno I calibrated this car. It's a stock block Evo 9. It's got a Haltech Platinum Series plug-in ECU. It's a flex car. It's got a Gonzivo Motorsports front mount turbo kit with a 6266 PTE turbocharger. Essentially full bolt-ons. We got some ID 1700 XDS injectors, the nice ones with the internal stainless internals, which I love, and obviously stock and sell because it's a product that I believe in, and that's what I should sell, right? See, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people sell what makes them the most profit. I sell what I use on my customer cars and on my personal car, and if I make a little profit compared to if I sell another product and make more profit and it's a shitty product, it's okay. I'll let the people that actually are that money hungry, you know, make that money. It's okay. I'm gonna sell what I know works and what I think is best for these builds. Anyway, I'm trying to get off topic. He did have a single fuel pump, 450. It wasn't even hardwired, and we tapped out at like 570-ish, like completely out of fuel. So this round of upgrades, we also have a billet twin 255 hanger from Alex from Bulletproof Racing that we're gonna replace, and these injectors are gonna be sufficient enough to make the power that he's trying to make and then some, because again guys, this is a stock block, so it's obviously not going to be making 800 horsepower, not on this setup at least. But anyway, another thing that we're actually swapping, guys, is he had Kelfer 272 camshafts, which are awesome camshafts for what they are, and we're swapping them to the GSC Billet S3. So the S3s are 280-degree duration camshafts, and this is something that we're going to talk about after I kind of show you guys this stuff. We're going to go to the office again, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do at the end of every video that we film over here. I would like to go in the office and kind of like break it down even more. And for this episode, I actually have a couple dyno graphs that I like to show you guys. Basically 272s versus 280s, which we've done a ton of on this dyno, so I can just pull out the graph, print it, and kind of talk about it with you guys and show you guys why you would want to choose one over the other, and the benefits and the cons, and because there's drawbacks to everything, right? Pros and cons. So we're going to talk about that. So cam swap on a 4G63 is actually pretty straightforward, especially if you're not doing springs. These springs are already replaced. So we have 50-40 which are usually about 90 to 95 pounds of seat pressure on the intakes, if I'm not mistaken, which they're pretty damn good. They don't float. I mean, we've had these up to like 45 pounds of boost, and they seem to be doing pretty well. I mean, anything past that, you kind of want to upgrade to either like a Kigley high pressure or a race only, depending on, you know, how much boost you're trying to shove in there. I would say anything below 55-ish PSI, high pressures and some shims, you get them up to like 110, you know, buck 15 seat pressure, you're going to be good. And then if you're trying to cram more in there, obviously go with the race onlys, which are about 130-ish base, and then you can shim those up as well. So pretty crazy. But anyway, not valve spring talk today, cam talk today. When you're installing 4G63 cams, one of the things that's very important, and not unique to the 4G63, but actually a pretty generic design, a lot of manufacturers use these to this day still. Actually, I know a lot of Mercedes engines use lifters, even the B58 does, so a lot of engines use this. So anyway, this is a hydraulic lifter, and it is hydraulic as the name suggests. And basically the way this works, guys, is as your oil pump builds pressure, there's if you look at the 10 o'clock, there's an orifice there that basically will pressurize this lifter galley. And on the side of it, as you guys saw, there's an orifice. And from that orifice, the oil will enter the actual lifter, and what that will achieve is it will basically pump up until it has zero clearance between the rocker and the cam lobe. So when you have zero clearance, at that point, when your cam lobe is coming around, as soon as it touches the rocker, your valve is beginning to open. So that's very nice, right? It's essentially like a self-adjusting system, which is very nice. However, it does have its drawbacks, which we're gonna talk about right now. Another system is the bucket style system, which a lot of cars nowadays also use. For instance, the Nissan GTR, the VR38 cylinder heads use the buckets. The 4B11 uses the buckets. The Hyundai Genesis uses the buckets, which is essentially a 4B11 engine. And the way these work is they're stamped on the bottom. They have a specific clearance. The way you would, clearance these is you would have your camshaft installed and torqued down, and you would have the base circle, the base lobe of your cam on top of the actual bucket, and then you would stick a filler gauge in between and see if you're within the desired clearance. Too much of a clearance and you're gonna have a lot of noise, so your knock sensors are gonna go crazy. It's gonna essentially sound like miniature rod knock the whole time, and you're gonna have a lot of wear because every time the cam lobe comes around, it's smacking the top of this bucket. And another thing is, if you have excessive clearance between the bucket and the actual cam lobe, that clearance, when it's taking up that clearance, it's actually taken away from the lift. So let's say you have 20 thou of clearance on this and you only need 6 thou. Now 14 thou of that is basically going down the drain. So you're losing 14 thou of lift essentially, right? Which is quite a bit. So you can lose power if you don't clearance this properly. Too tight, guys, and you can have a crazy amount of wear and a lot of heat buildup. That's kind of the drawbacks of the bucket style system, and the drawbacks of the hydraulic lifters, which I seem to have an abundance of like everywhere at the shop. And most of the time you replace these with the zero ticks, because if they have an engine failure, that lifter usually just houses all those bearing material and all the metal shavings and stuff. So we just trash it, because that's the last thing you want, is to put something contaminated back in the engine when you just rebuild it after a failure. That's why we even send the turbos out to get cleaned, because the center section can be contaminated. And that's another thing, contamination. That is the drawback of the hydraulic lifter, guys. So most of the time you guys will hear the term lifter tick, especially with the 4G63 stuff. It's they're very notorious, especially when they get super high in mileage, or even if they're just neglected and not maintained on time. Basically what you want to do is you want to do your oil changes on time. You don't want to wait on oil changes. Don't cheap out on the oil, because what happens is this the check valve assembly inside the actual lifter will get clogged, and when that happens, a portion of the clearance cannot be taken up by the oil. So when that happens, you essentially have what you would have if you had too much clearance on this. So you would lose lift, and not only that, it would start ticking. So brand new 4G63 out of the factory has pretty, zero lifter tick. A 4G63 with 100,000 miles with some neglected maintenance, or even sometimes when they're maintained properly, I mean, it's just stuff moving through the engine, just deposits of the piston ring, there's wear obviously in the engine, no matter if it's stock or built. That stuff can end up in the lifters and clog it up. So that's why we change them to the zero ticks most of the time whenever we do a new build. At the very least, obviously we do bleed them, because they're pumped up whenever you take them out. And that's another important thing, guys. Every single time you're doing a cam swap on a 4G63, you need to bleed your lifters. If you don't, there's a good chance you're gonna bend the valve, because it's gonna stick that valve open, and yeah, not a good idea. So you definitely need to bleed the lifters every single time you take a camshaft off of a 4G63 and you swap it. Anytime the cam basically comes off. Another thing that I see a lot of people don't do, which is kind of dumb, these cam seals. Oops. So I stock these. I have probably like 10 sets of them. Every time we do a cam swap or we do a build, we use a new one. Jesus Christ, my hand, butterfingers. And it's a very cheap item. It's a couple bucks from Mitsubishi. I think like $5-6 per seal. You can get it from AutoZone and stuff. I've never really had to, because I always just order from Mitsubishi. and it's just another point that it could leak. So I rather, you know, just put a new one because it's so cheap and we're there anyway. And yeah, usually doesn't get replaced, and so figured I would point that out. So what I'm gonna do, guys, is I'm gonna get a quick shot of basically the S3 in the actual, you know, installed, kind of talk about that, and then we'll go to the office and we'll do the breakdown. So I'm gonna go back to work. Hi, Andre.
Hi, I'm gonna work on the red one.
Okay, he's gonna work on the red Evo. That's a weird looking Evo.
Nice wheels.
Yeah, he's got some. Oh, let me show them the back one. Sheesh. And guys, I got some big ass hands, man. But yeah, 355.
Yeah.
Small. All right, see you guys in a bit. All right, guys, as promised at the end of the video, just doing a quick camshaft overview. We're just gonna go over a couple technical terms. That's Suited Racer, and I'm not gonna crop this by any means because this is just a video that I'm just gonna post just like that, because I'm not gonna edit anything out, and Andre is just a goofy person like that, so that's fine. Anyway, that's Suited Racer. Just wanted to talk about a couple of cam profiles for the Evo 8, 9, and 10 stuff, guys. So most of the time, what we use are the GSC S2s and S3s. We do sometimes use the S1s. The S1s are a very mild cam profile. They do have a little bit of higher lift and duration, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So for instance, the S2s have a duration of 274 degrees. The duration is how long the valve is held open. Lift is how much the valve is actually pushed open. So it has a direct correlation of lift to duration. So for instance, the S3s have more lift and more duration, meaning they're open for longer for a longer period of time, both valves, and they do have a higher lift, both intake and exhaust valves. What that means for you guys is, if you guys go to, let's say, from a stock camshaft, and let's say you're FBO, full bolt-ons, and you have everything, intercooler piping, intake, you have an upgraded intake manifold, you have everything upgraded, and you're trying to do cams now, what is the best camshaft profile to suit you? Well, for the most part, for people that are completely FBO full bolt-on, is an S2 profile. So the S2 profile provides a great amount of download torque, so it doesn't rub away from the left side of the graph, essentially. Meaning you can still make more power at a lower RPM and carry that power band all the way to the top, versus an S3 that will make more power up top, but it would not hit peak torque as early of an RPM as the S2 would. So this is a common gray area, guys. So with the Evos and any engine in general, but especially with the Evos, I'm sure you guys have heard, 400 foot-pounds of torque is, the maximum, this and that. Well, 400 foot-pounds of torque is kind of the maximum whenever you're dealing with something like the stock turbo. Whenever you go to a bigger turbo, that torque rating can actually grow substantially. The reason I say that is because if you move your power band to the right, meaning you put a bigger camshaft or you put a bigger turbocharger, your torque automatically moves to the right of the power band. So when that happens, your peak torque isn't happening as early in the RPM range, meaning your rods aren't getting stressed out as much. So on a stock turbo and stock cam configuration, yes, we want to keep it under 400 foot-pounds. But let's say you have a FP black car or an FP0 car and you want to put S2s or S3s on it. Well, that 400 foot-pound number really doesn't do any justice at that point, because the peak torque happens at a later RPM. So this is a very controversial topic, and this is somebody as a calibrator and as a builder just talking to you guys and just letting you know what I think about this. We've had S3 cars on the dyno make over 700 horsepower. Not 700 foot-pounds of torque, obviously. You have to keep the torque down. Even if it's at a later RPM point, you have to keep the torque down because of the stock rod. So you can pinch those stock rods. When I say pinch the stock rods, I'm talking about the rod bolts. That's the weak point of these engines. It's actually not the rod, believe it or not, which would be the next failure point, but the rod bolts are the first to let go. And this is why when people upgrade to like, let's say Eagle H beams or something like that, which is something we never run, we'll straight just go to like a, you know, the Cali's Ultra I beams, which are the strongest I beams on the market. You can add me if you want, but they are the strongest I beams on the market before moving to an aluminum rod. And they're a super strong rod. So if you do a piston upgrade and do a rod upgrade and rings, which I'm not even going to get into, but that's the whole topic on its own. We developed our rings with Total Seal a long time ago. We've constantly been upgrading. At this point, we have a PVD ring. That's a AP ring from them. That's a 1.2 millimeter top ring. And I know as soon as I say this, we're going to see a bunch of shops with them next year, you know, using this ring. But that's fine. That's okay. And that's what it is, guys. It's really the rod bolts. So we move on to obviously like a 2000 grade when you go to a Manly I-beam. As I said, we use the Ultra I-beams from Cali's, so they're super strong rods, and they use a 7/16 big block Chevy rod bolt, so they're super strong rods. But as far as cams go, not to try to kind of deter from this topic, as far as cams go, the bigger camshaft you have, the more duration you have, the less cylinder pressure you have at lower RPMs because you're increasing overlap. So essentially you're going to lose a lot of torque. But the torque that you're losing down low, you're going to make up top. And on a stock block, that's the key to keeping the engine happy. So you can make a lot of power on a stock block if you're moving your peak torque towards the right of the RPM range. And even if you're making 500 foot-pounds of torque, at a certain point it's okay because you're not hitting it super hard at such a low RPM. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So I have two cam cards over here. I'm going to try to keep this super quick because I'm trying to upload this video so you guys can, you know, ask me questions and all that good stuff. And I promised a video a day before, so I'm already a day late. But anyway, so we're looking at the S2 cam card over here. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but the S2s have a 274 degree duration on the intake and exhaust, and it's a 11.2 mil lift on the intake and an 11 mil lift on the exhaust. When we go to the S3s, we got a 11.7 mil lift on the intake, and we got a 11.7 mil lift on the exhaust. And we have 280 degree duration on both of them. So we're lifting the valve off higher from its actual seat, and we're holding it open for a longer period of time. Now, holding the valve up higher requires a stronger seat pressure. So for instance, in this case, even if you're on an S3 camshaft profile, you can just use a 5041 valve spring from GSC, which usually tends to end up at like 98 to 105 psi of seat pressure on the intakes. And the intakes are the important part because the intake is where the boost happens. But if you wanted to, you could go up to a 294 duration cam from Kelford, and those are like 12.2 mil of lift, I think. But at that point, you get to a certain point that you can't utilize that lift and duration because you don't have a ported cylinder head. So that's when you have to move on to, you know, CNC ported cylinder head. Not saying that we haven't made power with a S3 profile camshaft on the stock cylinder head. We have. But what I am telling you is on an S3 profile camshaft, if you have a CNC ported cylinder head or a properly ported hand ported cylinder head, will make a lot more power than a stock cylinder head would. At a later RPM range, obviously, especially if you know, open the intakes up a little bit more, the intake ports, you're going to lose a little bit of velocity and you're going to lose a little bit of spool because of that. Because think of boost as a restriction. As much as I hate saying that, think of boost as a restriction. You're trying to fill up that void with pressure. So when you port the cylinder head, you're taking material off. So that's more area that the actual turbocharger has to fill up with positive pressure. However, you can run less boost on a ported cylinder head and make the same amount of power than you would with a stock ported cylinder head. Or stock port cylinder head. With that being said, on a FBO car, the best route to go, in my opinion, is a S2 camshaft profile, a 272 or a 274 degree duration camshaft. And then on built motor cars, the best situation would be for you to go with an S3 or an R2 camshaft if you're on a stroker. So the R2 camshaft has a lot of lift, but it has the duration of an S2 profile. So it all depends on the build. If you guys have any questions, shoot it, you know, in the comment sections below. I hope this video has helped you guys a little bit, and we're gonna do more tech videos obviously in the future. And just wanted to share, you know, with you guys this a couple bits of information so you guys can make a determination of what camshaft you should use in your build, why you should go with one camshaft over the other. You never want to use the stock camshaft, first of all, because yeah, you'll spool up a lot quicker, but again, that peak torque point gets moved to the left. So the more you move it to the right, especially with a stock engine, your rods are going to be happier because you're having peak cylinder pressure at a later point, especially because of the fact that valve overlap, valve overlap is happening. So overlap reduces cylinder pressure. So when you have, you hear an Evo 8 with S3s chopping like big block Chevy, that's because of the duration. And what's happening is both the intake and exhaust valve are open at the same time for a certain period of time. Obviously you can't have them open for long enough, because if you do, then the car will just stall, the engine will just stall. But that helps tremendously at the upper RPMs, because you can fill it with more air and fuel, and you can actually burn it with more air and fuel because everything's happening so much faster. And that's why the S3s are favored for a higher RPM engine. So I hope this helps, guys. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the comments. And you can send me a DM on Instagram. You can send an email if you guys got any questions. I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. For all the appointments, we do have a link in our Instagram description, in our Instagram bio, that you can click on and just kind of fill a couple basic informations, and then we can take care of you guys. But other than that, I wish you guys all the health, all the happiness, and let me know if I can be of help in any way. Good luck building your car. See you guys soon.